The parking lot was nearly empty, bathed in the soft glow of the evening sun. A few scattered cars sat quietly under the flickering streetlights, and the hum of a distant engine echoed across the pavement. It should have been just another peaceful evening, but for one elderly woman, it was about to become a nightmare. Margaret, a gentle lady in her 70s, shuffled toward her car, her small shopping bag dangling from her wrist. She had just finished running errands and was looking forward to heading home, perhaps making a warm cup of tea and settling in with a good book. But just as she reached for her keys, a deep rumbling sound filled the air. Loud, aggressive, and deliberate. A black motorcycle roared into view, circling the lot like a predator sizing up its prey. The rider, clad in a leather jacket and dark visor, revved the engine, the deafening noise cutting through the evening calm. Margaret flinched at the sudden sound, her frail hands clutching her keys a little tighter. Then, without warning, the biker swerved closer. "Hey, lady!" he shouted, his voice dripping with amusement. "You lost or something?" Margaret blinked in confusion, her kind eyes searching for some sign of sincerity. But there was none. Instead, the man laughed, a cruel, taunting sound, and revved the throttle again, sending a burst of noise and smoke toward her. A few passers-by glanced in their direction, but quickly looked away. No one wanted to get involved. Margaret took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Please, I just want to get to my car," she said, her voice soft but firm. The biker tilted his head, as if considering her words, then suddenly yanked his handlebars, sending his motorcycle jerking forward just enough to make her stumble back. He laughed again, enjoying the power he had over her fear. "Come on, I'm just having a little fun," he sneered. "What's the matter? Too slow to move out of the way." Margaret's heart pounded. This wasn't just a prank, it was intimidation, and she was completely alone, or so she thought. Unbeknownst to the biker, someone else had been watching. A man, sitting quietly on a bench nearby, had noticed everything. He had been flipping through his phone, seemingly lost in thought, but now his gaze was locked onto the scene unfolding before him, his brow furrowed, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. That man was Keanu Reeves. Dressed casually in a worn jacket and jeans, he blended in with the surroundings, just another face in the crowd. But unlike the others, he wasn't about to look away. Keanu had always believed in kindness. He had spent years navigating Hollywood, meeting all sorts of people, some good, some bad. But one thing remained constant. He never tolerated cruelty, and right now, watching this biker harass an elderly woman, he felt something stir inside him. Margaret was now fumbling with her car door, trying to unlock it as quickly as possible, but her hands were trembling, and the keys wouldn't cooperate. The biker, clearly entertained, revved his engine again, making the bike lurch forward just enough to send another wave of fear through her. That was enough. Keanu stood up. The biker, too caught up in his own amusement, didn't notice at first. But as Keanu walked toward them, his steps measured and calm, something in the air shifted. There was an unspoken intensity about him, something that made people instinctively take notice. And then finally the biker did. His laughter faltered as he caught sight of the man approaching. He squinted, as if trying to recognize him, but before he could piece it together, Keanu spoke. "Hey," he said, his voice even but firm. "That's enough." The biker smirked, trying to mask his sudden unease. "And who are you?" "Her bodyguard." Keanu didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at Margaret, offering her a small nod, a silent reassurance that she was no longer alone. Then he turned back to the biker, his expression unreadable. I'm just someone who doesn't like bullies. The tension in the air was thick now, the kind that made even the most reckless people think twice. The biker's hands tightened on the handlebars. He had been having fun, until now, and for the first time that evening, he wondered if he had pushed things too far. Margaret, still shaken, watched as the stranger, no, not just any stranger, Keanu Reeves, stood between her and the man who had been tormenting her, and in that moment, everything changed. What happens next? Will the biker realize who he's dealing with? Will he back down, or is he foolish enough to test his luck? Stay tuned, because this is just the beginning. The biker's grip on the handlebars tightened, his fingers curling around the throttle, as if ready to respond with another burst of noise. But something about the man standing before him made him hesitate. Keanu Reeves didn't look angry. He wasn't yelling, wasn't posturing like someone trying to prove a point. No, he was just there, calm, steady, and completely unshaken. And that was unsettling. For a moment, the biker tried to convince himself that this was just some random guy trying to play hero. He had dealt with people like that before, people who thought they could step in and stop him, only to back down when things got serious. But then, as he studied Keanu's face, a flicker of recognition passed through his mind. Wait a minute. Was this guy? No, it couldn't be. The biker pushed the thought aside. He wasn't going to let some guy with a soft voice and a tough stare make him look weak. You got a problem, man? The biker asked, tilting his head, trying to sound casual, unaffected. Because I was just having a little fun. No harm done. Keanu didn't flinch. Doesn't look like she's having fun. Margaret, still gripping her car keys, swallowed hard. She had never been the kind of person to cause trouble or draw attention. But right now, standing between the biker and this man who had stepped in for her, she felt like the center of something far bigger than herself. I just want to leave, she said softly, hoping to diffuse the situation. Keanu glanced at her, then back at the biker, then let her leave. The biker exhaled sharply, rolling his shoulders like he was trying to shake off the weight of the moment. He hated this feeling, like he was losing control of the situation. People were starting to notice. A couple of bystanders had stopped, pretending not to see, and were now watching from a safe distance, their phones gripped in their hands, ready to record if things escalated. This was getting messy. All right, the biker muttered, throwing up his hands in exaggerated surrender. Didn't know we had a superhero in the parking lot today. Margaret wasted no time. With trembling hands, she finally got her car door open and slipped inside, locking it the moment she sat down. She didn't start the engine right away. Her heart was still hammering too fast. But she gripped the wheel tightly, knowing she was safe now. The biker revved his engine again, more out of habit than anything else, and looked at Keanu one last time. There was something unreadable in the actor's expression, something that made the biker uneasy. You should mind your own business, the biker said, his voice quieter now, less sure. Keanu gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. Take care of yourself. The biker scoffed, but didn't say anything else. With one last rev, he turned the handlebars sharply and sped off, tires screeching against the pavement. As he disappeared into the street, Margaret let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Keanu turned back to her, offering a small, reassuring smile. You all right? She nodded, her hands still gripping the wheel. I think so. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then Margaret exhaled and gave him a shaky smile. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here." Keanu shook his head. "No need to thank me. No one should have to go through that alone." Margaret sat there, letting his words sink in. She had spent most of her life believing that the world was a good place. That kindness always found its way back. But in moments like this, it was easy to forget, and yet, here was a complete stranger. No, not just any stranger. Keanu Reeves, proving that kindness still existed. As she finally turned the key in the ignition, her heart felt lighter. The fear was still there, lingering in the back of her mind, but so was something else. Hope, and as Keanu watched her drive away, disappearing safely into the night, he felt it too. But what neither of them knew was that the story wasn't over yet, because somewhere down the road, the biker was still thinking about what had just happened, and he wasn't the type to just let things go. The biker sped down the street, gripping the handlebars tighter than before. His mind was racing, replaying the moment over and over again. He had been in control until that guy showed up. That guy. Something about him had felt off. Not in a dangerous way, but in a way that made the biker feel small, and he hated that feeling. The way he had just stood there, unshaken, staring at him like he wasn't afraid, like he was disappointed. That look had gotten under his skin, more than he wanted to admit. He pulled into a gas station, his bike rumbling as he parked. He needed to clear his head. As he reached for his helmet, a voice cut through the noise. "Hey man, you okay?" It was another biker, someone he recognized from a few local meetups. The guy wasn't a close friend, just another rider who hung around the same spots. The biker exhaled, rubbing his face. "Yeah, just had some guy get in my way back there. Thought he was some nobody, but I don't know, something about him threw me off." The other biker chuckled, pulling out his phone. "You mean that parking lot thing? Dude, it's all over the internet." The biker frowned. "What?" His friend turned the phone around. A video was playing, a shaky recording from a bystander at the parking lot. It showed everything. The intimidation, the way the man had stepped in, the confrontation, and then the comments. Keanu Reeves being a legend again. Even in real life, he's the ultimate good guy. The biker really thought he could mess with Keanu Reeves. Yikes. The biker's stomach twisted. Keanu Reeves. That's why the guy had seemed familiar. That's why everyone was watching. He hadn't just been some random guy stepping in. He was one of the most respected actors in Hollywood. A man known not just for his movies, but for his kindness. The biker swallowed hard. He had been caught bullying an elderly woman, and now the whole world knew. He wanted to be mad. He wanted to say it wasn't fair, but deep down, beneath the frustration and embarrassment, there was something else. A feeling he hadn't expected. Regret. For the first time in a long while, he saw himself the way others did. Not as a tough guy, not as someone in control, but as a bully. A grown man picking on an elderly woman for no reason other than to feel powerful. And it didn't sit right. He didn't know Keanu Reeves personally, but the way the actor had looked at him back, there, it wasn't just anger, it was disappointment, like he had hoped for better. The biker let out a slow breath. Maybe he had needed to see himself through someone else's eyes. Maybe this was the wake-up call he hadn't realized he needed. The next morning, Margaret walked outside to find something unexpected. A small bouquet of flowers sat on the hood of her car, along with a simple note. "I'm sorry." A biker. She blinked in surprise, looking around, but there was no one in sight. She picked up the note, reading it again. For a moment, she just stood there, taking it in. Then, with a small knowing smile, she carefully tucked the note into her pocket and carried the flowers inside. Some stories don't end with dramatic showdowns. Some don't need a hero taking revenge. Sometimes all it takes is a moment where someone chooses to change. And maybe, just maybe, this was one of those times.